call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bennett?
Present.
Mrs. Eckert?
Here.
Mr. Franco?
Here.
Mrs. Goebel?
Here.
Dr. Pavola?
Here.
Dr. O'Shea?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Farr?
Here.
Mrs. Arnold?
Here. All right, can we get a nomination for a temporary president?
I nominate Bill Cole.
We've got a nomination for Dr. Perbola. Do we have a
Second.
second? We have a second? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Do I have to abstain?
No.
No.
Okay. Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, we'll declare the nomination closed for temporary president. A motion to appoint the temporary president.
Motion to appoint the temporary president.
We have a motion, another motion, a third motion. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right. Dr. Pavola, would you like the gavel?
I trust you with it. I'll
Oh,
bang
okay.
my fist. So now we move on to the seating of the new and returning members and the oath of office and reading a certification of election.
Okay, all of Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Burke, Dr. O'Shea, and Mr. Pavola have completed their oath of office, and they have turned in their certificate of elections. So they're all seated at this point.
Welcome.
Welcome, Carrie. Welcome.
Thank you.
You'll enjoy. So now I get to take over and I could accept nominations for president of the board. Are there any nominations?
I'll make the nomination for Holly Arnold for president. Second.
Are there any further nominations for president? I hear none, so I am declaring the nominations closed for president. Now we'll take a motion to appoint President Holly Arnold.
A motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Will we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Congratulations to Holly Arnold, to be elected as elected president. Now I'm going to take nominations for the vice president.
I'll make the nomination for Bill Farr for vice president.
Second.
Are there any further nominations for vice president? I hear none. Therefore, I want to declare nominations closed for vice president. And I'd like to look for a motion to appoint Vice President Mr. Phil Farr.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Congratulations to Mr. Farr for winning the close election of vice president. And now, as the temporary president, I want to make a lot of changes to the district while I have. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Holly Arnold.
Thank you. I appreciate that you say congratulations and not my condolences. I'm assuming this comes with a double pay raise of $0.
Get twice you pay.
Yes. All right, other organization business, established meeting times and dates for 2024. There is a list provided. Following our typical schedule.
Last several years, we've had Wednesdays in October. Is that a Wednesday?
Is that a Wednesday in October?
Yes.
All right.
Wasn't that Wednesday because of trunk or treat?
Well, 1 week is trunk or treat and 1 week is conferences, generally speaking. So
bonfire.
without having those set yet.
Okay, that's why it is.
But then
Yeah.
also bonfire?
Oh, yeah, and the bonfire, sorry.
So these dates are good then?
Well, do we have a motion to approve them?
I'll motion to approve the calendar as
Second.
represented.
Okay, now to Paula's question, is there any question, anything we need to change? Sorry, we should have done that first.
So we can always change this though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
later on if we have to change it. So this is just, this is the outline of the next
So,
year's schedule. That's
yeah, what
we're voting
happens is, this is what we publish in the paper, so that it doesn't have to be published every single week or every single month.
on. Sure.
And then if we make a change, or if we schedule a committee meeting, then we put advertisements out for that, so.
Correct. I think that, like, some other ones that you might notice, like November 14th, typically we go the third Thursday. Like in November next year, that's not an option. We have to go to the second one, just because of the way the date falls. And Carolyn, what was the other one, February?
Yes,
Like,
February,
so February is actually, is that the fourth Thursday?
yeah, because the third Thursday was like parent-teacher conference.
It's
day or
parent-teacher conferences, correct.
something?
So we tried to maintain the third Thursday as best we can, but it just didn't work in November or in February. And again, you're 100% right about the October. We work around those other events that are occurring.
And like Holly said, if we have to add a meeting, we just make the public announcement.
We just
If
have
we
to
change a
advertise
date,
it.
we Make a public announcement in the
Correct.
appropriate timeframe. So we have a motion, right, and a second?
Yep. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goble?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. It's not on the agenda here, but I just wanted to state that unless I hear otherwise, we're going to keep our committee appointments, so, for the coming year. All right, any public comments on the reorganization meeting only? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Great, thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are we saying the pledge again? Oh, we're not going to say the pledge again. How about some superintendent's remarks?
Good evening, board and community. You may have noticed me limping my way onto the stage this evening. Unfortunately, I ruptured my Achilles tendon a few days ago. Everyone on campus, but it's an opportunity for me to say everybody on this campus, students and staff, have been very kind and helpful to me over the last couple days, especially when they see me struggling to get around. I'll find out tomorrow the exact treatment I need to get on the road to recovery, but I'm very thankful to always work in an environment where students and staff are willing to help anybody in need. I'd like to welcome a new member to our school board. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Carrie Oshirak. Did I say that right, Doctor?
Yes.
All right, Carrie, welcome.
Thank you.
Having multiple children in our school district, she brings a great perspective to the board, and we're excited to have her on our team. You know, last month we celebrated Veterans Day with a very special event right here. We were fortunate to have many local veterans on hand for a band and choral concert, followed by a brunch that was prepared by our students in the catering club. I mention that because in the board packet this evening, I think it's on page 4, I included a letter that was sent to high school principal Mr. Winsek from the Tunkhannock Borough Mayor, Stacy Huber. In the letter, Mayor Huber thanked Mr. Winsek and the district and our students and staff for staging such a great event to honor our veterans. So I'd like to thank the mayor for sending us the letter, and I included it in the packet so the board can see it. Parents that are watching, December is a very busy month for our schools. There are so many events scheduled. In fact, there are 2 holiday concerts happening tonight at the Intermediate Center. Winter sports is in full swing. There's something happening just about every single night. While we do share a great deal on social media, be sure to check in with your child's school about specific events or if you just have any questions. About a week ago, and I know some board members were also contacted, but I was contacted, as were other administrators, by some parents about our weight room. They had some concerns initially about the number of students that were using our facility immediately after school. Let me start by saying, if this is an issue we have, kids working out to improve their physical health is a great thing, and it's a good issue to have. It's a good one to find a solution to. In an effort to alleviate their concerns and perhaps answer some questions, I'm just going to share a couple quick things. The facility is open to all high school students after school from 3 to 4:30. No one's excluded. For instance, yesterday or one of the days earlier this week, we had students in there at the same time that were members of, some were from the baseball team, some were from basketball, some were from softball, some were from football, some were from wrestling. What a great opportunity to use our facilities. We do have a great facility. And it's also worth mentioning, you don't have to be on a sports team to go and work out in the weight room. If you want to work out after school, go work out. Just like the school day, the district, we provide supervision using all the students that are in the facility. Many times we have more, in fact most times we have more than one adult there, one present. However, we don't offer personal training services. That's quite honestly not a skill we have. But the facility is also much larger than people realize. The building's over 3,000 square feet, and using a very conservative estimate of how many students can safely work out simultaneously, we still come up with a number of about 55 or more. I've also heard concerns about alleged some behavior issues of students that are working out. And after we've interviewed multiple students that were present, we really haven't been able to substantiate any of that. But if parents or students have specific information that they're willing to share with us, please give it to high school administration. We run a very tight ship. We will definitely address this situation. And our coaches know that if they want a time to work out with their team specifically, that's arranged by contacting our athletic director or the high school administration. And other than the 3 o'clock to 4:30 window, time slots are available. All the time slots are available. For instance, we have swimmers and wrestlers that use the facility every morning before school at about 6:30. We also have an auxiliary weight room, very nice one, here in the high school that's available for teams. I'm thrilled to say that we have about 10% of our students, or just under 10% of our students, that are using that facility every day. I think that's a very positive thing. And any additional questions or concerns should be shared directly with the athletic director or the high school administration. To move on, earlier this week, we had some administrators and deans and security personnel take place in a school safety and security training. It was quite honestly, it was amazing. The participants, of which I was fortunate enough to be able to go and kind of move my crutches throughout the day, but they were placed into simulated situations that escalated in severity as the day went on. And it was like virtual reality. You were immersed in a world with 360-degree screens that the situation changes depending on how you interact with it, which was very unique. It was a great training opportunity. I'd like to thank the staff at Pennsylvania School Safety Institute for working with us. Their facility was top-notch, and we look forward to sending additional staff. It's a free training, so we just had to pay mileage to go. It's top-notch. And finally this evening, I'd like to mention that our security director, Rich Seberg, who's right over there, Mr. Seberg, along with the Tunkhannock Township Police Department, the District Attorney's Office, and the 911 Center, is facilitating a school safety presentation for our community right here in the auditorium next Thursday evening, December 14th at 5 p.m. This proactive presentation, it's entitled Avoid deny, defend, and it's about civilian response to an active shooter event. Unfortunately, these days, these are things we have to be prepared for, and we want to share with our community the things that we train on. Parents and grandparents are invited to attend, and we will be sharing additional information and reminders as we get closer to next Thursday. But Board, thank you very much for the opportunity to share information.
Thank you. One quick thing I wanted to add is that School Safety Institute is in fact free, but only for members of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. So
Correct.
that is a benefit that we receive. We sent staff down there for 2 full days at no cost to us other than the cost to get there. And that is because of our membership with the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. All right, I'm going to announce some executive session information. We held an executive session prior to tonight's board meeting for personnel matters related to specific staff and also to discuss some contractual or real estate transaction strategy. With that, we'll move to public comment. There will be 2 public comment periods. Please refer to the inside and the backside booklet pages for information on giving comment or making objections to board business. And with that, we'll open the floor to public comment on agenda items only. Seeing none, we'll move along. We have the enrollments there for everybody's viewing, pages 5 and 6. Any discussion? Okay, the approval of minutes for November 14th meeting. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. Pabola,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 7, business and finance. Do we have a motion for items 1 and 2?
Motion to approve? Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. Pabola,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett,
Abstain.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 8, the superintendent's report.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the personnel report as presented.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to ask if we could please try to get in the approval of conferences prior to them happening.
Absolutely. That's, I agree with you, Director Bennett. That's on the next item, I believe.
Okay.
So this is the personnel report, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Item 1, yes.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. Pabola,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes.
Number 2, I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving conference attendance as follows, and this, I believe, is what Director Bennett was just referencing, and honestly, I agree with that, and I think you're right. It's become the norm as of late, and we will correct that.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So I think it's worth mentioning that this was projected for mileage just to drive there, and some people ended up carpooling, so in that case, they wouldn't actually be paid those amounts.
That's
So
correct. I
this
should have
was-
clarified that.
yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, no other discussion? We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. Pabola,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes.
And the final one under superintendents was motion to approve the deletion of a special education pre-K to 12 certificate from the PA Teaching Certificate of Employee number 800.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This was upon their request, correct?
This was her request, that's correct.
I think anytime we lose flexibility as a district, it doesn't help us be able to fill spots if needed, so.
I agree. And I also know, I believe that us accepting this means that the person has the option to do it. It's not making them do it. So if they were to change their mind, this is a moot point, right?
Yes, I believe so. No, this does not revoke the certificate. This allows the person to move ahead with board approval to petition the state to have it
That's
removed.
what we want. Okay. Any other discussion on this item?
It's just worth mentioning, the employee is not currently, was a special education educator for us in the past, is not currently a special education educator.
Okay.
We did, it's also probably worth mentioning, we did advise her to really think about it pretty hard of what she was doing, being that the person worked very hard in college to obtain that certificate. And I advised against doing it, and as did Mrs. Egan, and she still wanted to proceed with having this certificate removed.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
No.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
No.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Committee reports. I don't believe we've had any committee meetings, but I believe I've heard we need to schedule one.
Oh, yeah.
Curriculum
Me?
committee?
Or, yeah, that, yes.
If you move back, I won't point to you.
I'm like, well, I didn't know if you were pointing to me or Laura.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's you.
Right, yes, the curriculum committee, I don't know the timing though. You want to,
We can, I mean, do you want to schedule it for sometime in January, or do you want to wait till the January meeting to schedule it? I don't,
That's completely up to you then. I could go either way. There's nothing, I would prefer January so that we could get the course catalog out.
okay, so she would prefer to meet in January, if that's
That's
okay.
I don't know. No,
I
it's
know
on here.
I'm on it, Paula's on it.
I don't remember the third person, is it Laura?
I wanted to say it was Lori.
Or maybe it's Lori.
Lori, is it you?
Well, we just, it's in the papers, it was just
I
came
know.
out today, right?
Hold on, I'm pulling out the,
Oh,
oh, it's Laura, sorry, so it's Paula, Holly, and Laura.
Okay.
Yeah.
But of course, any board member,
I think I used to be on that board.
maybe. The meeting is the, do you want it? Oh, we do- you
so
want
the
it?
board meeting is the 18th. Do we want to meet before the board meeting, or
That would be great.
Okay.
does that
Is
work?
that okay for you?
Okay, so like a 5:30? Is that enough? Okay.
5:30.
Right.
All right, do any other committees need to schedule a meeting? Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Number 1, recommend that a resolution be adopted to commit resources on the financial statement for the fiscal period ending June 30th, 2023 as the Government Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 54, GASB 54, is the amount of $6,200,000 for future district-wide capital improvements. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Do we want, this was the one that was tabled last month for just making sure that the calendar dates were correct, if they were. Any other discussion? Seeing none, can we get a roll call, please?
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 2, the 6-month review and motion to reapprove the district's current health and safety plan with no changes. This is procedural.
We're still required every 6 months to reapprove our health and safety plan. We haven't changed it in a long time. I mean, it's been the same since we've returned. It's working very well for us.
Yep.
And there's been no changes in the Department of Health in regards to
Nothing.
education, so, okay.
Nothing.
So do we have to vote on this, or we're just reviewing this?
We have to reapprove it.
Yeah. Do we know when the requirement, does that have an expiration date, or is it in perpetuity?
As far as I know, it's into perpetuity.
That's fantastic. All right. Did we already have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Verbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Number 3, the review of the fuel cap for transportation contractors. We agree to look at this every few months or so.
There is, currently, we're far below the amount to pay the transportation companies. We can continue to do this every quarter. That's what we've been doing it every 3 months. Or do you just want me to bring it to your attention when it goes above?
Yeah, I think we get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Just keep watching as it ticks up and you need to bring it to.
If it goes above or near
Near it.
the limit, we'll bring it to your attention.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that item? Okay, moving into new business. Update on the right to know requests.
So far for the 23-24 school year, we've received 9 right-to-know requests since the last board meeting. We've received 2 additional right-to-know requests, and district staff has spent about 4.5 hours processing requests since those 9 have been received.
Any other discussion on that item? Okay. Item 2, we have a summary of the Kelly Services substitute teacher fill rate for everybody's information. Any discussion? Item 3, motion to approve bus and van contracts as presented.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Verbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 4, motion to approve application for payments as listed. They're both to D&M Construction Unlimited. One in the amount of $20,323.44, the other for $16,225.14 for the structural pool renovation. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Verbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 5, motion to approve a consulting contract with the NEIU 19 for mindfulness training on January 12th, 2024. Cost is $300 in total for this teacher training.
And I just want to add, this is a training for our teachers. It's also for our support staff, our paraprofessionals. This is training for them on an in-service day. This is not curriculum-based. This is not designed to provide resources for teachers to take back to the classroom. This is not like SEL learning for students or training teachers for students. This is solely teacher well-being and mindfulness for staff, and it's being presented on an in-service day.
Self-care.
Self-care.
And looking at, if I may, it's $300 in total, not $300 per. I'm looking at the contract or the agreement. $300 in total, not per person.
300 total.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Can I have one other question on that?
Yeah.
Paul, this is one topic of several on that day, right? Or is this the topic for that teacher in service day?
I'm going to kick that to Mary Jean. What does the agenda look like for that in-service day?
There's several different topics.
Yeah,
for
this
that
is just
day.
one
Yeah,
topic,
this is
like a
just
wellness
This
topic.
is one
Yep.
session.
Gotcha.
45 minutes, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Verbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 6, motion to approve an HVAC project contract with Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling Service Incorporated for the Primary Center Cafeteria and Auditorium at a cost not to exceed $625,673.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do you want to just clarify anything about, for public?
Absolutely. Just, this project is one we've been looking at for a while now. We wanted to make sure that we had the funding available for it. This was always on our radar. It turns out we do have the funding available from current resources or capital improvement funds. So this will not require any additional lending or taking from our fund balance at all. It is money we currently have on hand specifically for capital improvements. And also, this was the lowest bid out of the 3 companies that did bid. In fact, this was significantly lower. And what this will do is this will provide HVAC, air conditioning essentially, in the cafeteria and the auditorium at the primary center. Very similar to the projects we're doing in the other 2 buildings.
This is coming from the bond issuance that we did in conjunction with the capital plan that we approved earlier.
Correct.
Months ago.
Months and months ago, correct.
This was not money that was just found somewhere.
Oh, no.
This became available because of pushing the other project that involved the boiler at the administration building.
We thought this was a better use of the funding than redoing the boiler at the administration building. I'd rather focus on the buildings that, quite honestly, have students in them.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that we didn't have like a magical
No.
pot of money that just showed up on the doorstep.
No, we did not.
Okay. Any other discussion? We had a motion, yeah. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 7, motion to approve a 1-year contract with Redeker Software at a cost of $50,979. This is our student tracking, all kinds of
Yeah, this is our
stuff.
student information system that attendance, grades, report cards, transcripts. We have options to do 1 year or 3 year. At this point, we're going to enter into a 1-year contract because we're going to explore
Options.
other opportunities.
Okay.
We've been meeting with some companies, so when we find one we think we like, we're going to involve all the stakeholders before we make a move. And maybe it'll end up being back with Redeker, but I didn't want to enter into a 3-year deal at this point.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, our last item for tonight on the agenda, motion to approve the standard agreement for fees, costs, and expenses for legal representation by the firm of Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, with that, do we have any public comment on anything, agenda items or non-agenda items? Thank you. Happy to have the resources of all of Sweet Stevens, including you, of course. No public comment? Any board comment?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Burke's motion to adjourn.